things that are bothering us, we're offering them into you. We're praying that you take your place this morning, and our discussions will lead to a fruitful life, a life founded in you, a life rooted in your love, and a life that is to bring us prosperity, that is to bring us grace and advancement in your kingdom. Lord Jesus, we're calling in for you to take your place this morning. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, we pray with thanksgiving. Amen. So first and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to you all for heeding the call to give me the opportunity to present to you some financial concepts within the facets of the world and of the church as well. The reason I'm so passionate about this is because whenever money is talked about in church, there is this stigma that we get sometimes. It makes us cringe. We always see money as a detachment from actually the Word of God. What we are going to discuss today, you'll be surprised, or maybe not be surprised. These are principles that have been founded in the Bible. And everything that we're doing as Christians, as we are here today, we are here to understand what does the Bible say about our finances. So today, the topic about finances could take even a whole week, even a year to discuss it extensively. But I've picked these 4 or 5 key topics. And we're going to have a quick discussion, and afterwards we'll have one-to-one conversation. Or if you have any other questions, you can reach out to me personally, and we can take that further. So we'll look at budgeting, we'll look at investments, we'll look at family planning, we'll look at retirement, and we'll look at inheritance. Just a quick background of myself. I've been in the financial industry for some time now, worked in various institutions. I've worked with PwC in their financing projects for various financial companies. Morgan Stanley in the time when I was in the operations in securities transactions and tax advisory as well. In Santander, I worked as their personal banker during the time when I was in Liverpool as well. And in Harrington Brooks, I was in their debt advisory services. And throughout my journey in my career, I've come to realize that we all have the same concept or belief, but we do not understand where does these issues stems from. From my personal experiences, I've come to realize that we need God in everything that we do. We have been given the gifts of life, the gifts that are in our lives. So one may wonder, what are these gifts? And we'll come to that later on. So I have a question for us all. What is the measure of wealth? What is the measure of wealth? Please feel free if you have any comments. What is the measure of wealth? How would you and I measure our wealth? Any takers? Don't be shy. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Owning a land, yep. Yeah. Yeah, that's one good way of measuring wealth. Is anyone, any comments at the back? The goal is not for us to be rich or place our hopes in our money and wealth. The goal is to be satisfied with what we have and show stewardship and accountability and diligence in the gifts that God has placed in us. So the measure of wealth I've put is for us to remind ourselves that we came into this world with nothing, and we will leave this world with nothing. So when we are measuring wealth, it shouldn't be necessarily the substance that we see. It could be the inward attitude. It could be our talents. It could be our time. It could be the efforts we put into various activities that we do within the church. I know we're talking about finances today, but it's a broader concept. Okay? So the Bible talks about finances. There's over 2,000 verses in the Bible that talks about finances. And when you look at all these verses, we can associate them in one of these key 5 areas. I hope you can see them on the screens. So the Bible extensively talks about finances in budgeting, in missions, funding, the Great Commission, revival and transformation. The Bible talks about finances in generosity, which I believe the church is really good at, tithing and giving. And also the Bible talks about finances in our wealth in terms of investment, savings, retirement, and debts. And one of the things that we don't hear a lot about is character, greed, and coveting. We are always chasing after money that could lead to certain characters that are going to be formed when we talk about finances. So the Bible gives us a full holistic view of what our finances should be in terms of our character, in terms of our budgeting, in terms of our missions, in terms of our generosity, and in terms of our wealth. How are we understanding all these components? So on the next slide, to have a strong basics of everything that we're going to speak about and going forward, Hebrews says, keep your lives free from the love of money and be satisfied with what you have. For God has said, I will never leave you and I will never abandon you. This verse is the basics of what we should be when we come to our financial health or when we talk about money. And I've highlighted 3 key words there. Can you put that back, please? The 3 key words here is free, love, and satisfy. These 3 key words is very important to understand. It's really difficult to have a love for something and also to be satisfied. I quite remember when I first met my wife. I know she'll be watching online, and forgive me. I was really in love with her. I was so besotted, and going on a date and understanding how she is, and you form that love and attachment. But when we first had our firstborn, there's a different kind of love that I developed. From that moment, that love sprung into my heart, and you can understand the importance of love in everything that we do. And here, God is saying to us that we should free our lives from the love of money. Why? We cannot love God and we cannot love money. We cannot serve 2 masters here in the scriptures. It talks about it extensively. If we love God, we will hate money. If we hate God, we will love money. So the choices is up to us. Where are we going to place our love? And being satisfied calls for contentment, calls for fulfillment, and calls for us to be pleased with what we have. It doesn't matter if it's really small, we need to be pleased with that. If it's something big that God has blessed us with, we need to be content with that. I believe we all here, we know the story of the gifts, the talents. That's one of the favorite stories when we talking about finances, where one was given 1 talent, the other was given 3, and the other was given 5. If you are not content with what God has given you, you'll be looking around and wondering, why have I been given small? But we miss the mark that God is calling us to be content, and the aspect of our money is to what? Multiply and be fruitful and be a good steward of what we've been given. It's very important. So in the scriptures here, it reminds us that whenever we have something that is, we have nothing, God is reminding us that we should not despair. If we have enough, we should be content, and if we have much, we should sacrifice for the sake of the other. So on the next slide, so how can we free ourselves from the love of money and be satisfied with what we have? How can we do that? This is a question that every single day when we talk about finances, it's a battle. It's a battle that we face each and every single day. And to enable us to do that, we need to count our costs. We need to understand which calls for a budget. So for example, if you were to go to your GP hospital and the doctor just doesn't go and treat you. The doctor needs to diagnose what the issue, the ailment is, right? So he or she will ask you a lot of questions. So what happened? What did you do? Are you feeling pains here? Is this and that? And then they'll be able to prescribe exactly what you need to do. That is the same thing that a budget does for us. A budget is like a diagnosis of our personal life and our living, our income and our expenditure. So can you go to the next slide, please? This is something, sorry, the slide before that. Yeah, that one, thank you. In this slide, it talks about, this is just for me, what goes on in my head. There's a lot of things that goes on in our lives. How are we going to afford a living? How are we going to maintain a family? How are we going to, even emotions, because it's attached to money, how are we going to pay for bills, do that, our cars, even a holiday, our children's fees, clothing. These are all things that we need that we need money for. I believe so, right? So this calls for us to have a budget. If we click on the next, yes. So having a budget put into perspective what is required from us. So it would help us diagnose every single bit of our lives, and we'll be able to, as Hebrews has commanded us to do, to be satisfied, and that will help us to free our lives from the love of money. So in this slide, we are always in a battle between what we need and what we want. I'm yet to come across in the Bible where it says God will provide us what we want. And if it's something that you've come across, please let me know. But it's always, God emphasizes on our needs. And that is what a budget should look at. Our needs, my needs may be different from your needs. So why do we have a living standards where we are always trying to mirror other people's needs? There may be circumstances where there's similarities, but there's always differences, because there is no two persons that will have the same needs. It may be the same. We all need to pay rent and mortgages and all that, but still, they're different. So let's look at the components of a budget. And I'm sure we all know the budget constitutes an income and an expenditure. And this is the main component of a budget. However, I'll take it a step further. For us to be a good steward of God's gifts in our lives, it calls for us to understand what our disposable income is. On the next click. So a disposable income is an amount that an individual or household has available to spend and to save after, spending on everyday needs and so have you. So this here, I've put here types of income. It may be similar to your situation. There are various forms of income. And this should be seen as the gifts that God has placed in our lives. We need to be happy. We need to be content with it. And if we draw that happiness and contentment, we'll be able to manage that resource that God has given to us effectively and diligently. There is no magic. God will not place that income in your life not knowing that you are unable to manage it. We need to be good stewards of God's blessings. On the next slide, we have expenditure. One of the things that I want to draw your attention to is the expenditure should be on our daily needs. It could be our weekly needs or monthly needs, but the importance is our needs. So if, for example, I always have a battle with back to my wife again. Sometimes or I want us to order, let's say, pizza, and she comes back to me, is that a need or a want? And I'll say, okay, I want that, so let's cook today, and that saves us a bit of money. It's a battle. Sometimes I would want to purchase the new version of an iPhone. Is that necessary? Is my old iPhone still functioning? Is that a need or is that a want? The reason I'm bringing these points out is when we understand our budget, we will start diagnosing our expenditure and we will start relieving waste. Think about it. In every business that we see, every CFO, one of their tasks is to make sure that the business is efficient, is they're generating income, and whenever there is, lack of income and their expenses are higher than their income, what do? They lay people off, they change. There's a lot of waste management, and people get, laid off from work. It's because of these things. We need to start applying these things to our personal life and change our lives in a way that we are relieving waste. There's a lot of things that when we think about in our expenditure, we can consider, okay, I may be able to afford this, but is this something that is needed for me now, or is it needed for the future? It calls for planning and adequate analysis of ourselves. So I've put up a profile here. It's just for us to do an exercise together as a family. I've named the person Amanda. Amanda is a student, and she's the first year in education, studying and also having a part-time job. She enjoys fashion, hanging out with friends, and also her dream is to be a travel writer. Before you move to the next slide, I would want to ask us all, what do you think Amanda's income would be? What would be the sources of income for Amanda? She's 18, she has a job. Sorry? Did anyone say anything? She's working, okay, good, yeah. Student loan, that's right. Sorry? Parents, that's true. And I've been there. I was relying on my dad and mom to help me. So these are possible sources of income for Amanda. So what do we think Amanda will spend her income on? Just some ideas. Sorry? Fashion, okay. Clothes, traveling, okay. Rent, food, yes. Sorry. Outings. movies, okay? Post materials, yes. Course materials, yeah. There's a lot that Amanda would be spending her income on, right? So on the next slide, you're all right about that. So in here you can see Amanda has her student grant of 1,500 as £1,055, parent support of 650, and part-time job of 400, which makes everything to 2,105. On the next slide, there's a tall list of expenses. Her rent, 850, phone, food shopping, going out, clothing, Netflix, travel. Can you go to the next slide? Gym, savings, hair products, hairdressing, makeup, credit card payments, overdraft fees, and holiday savings. So you can see there's a tall list of expenses. I don't know, I'm not trying to put anyone on the spot here. How many of us have a budget where we sit down and write down what we spend our money on a monthly or weekly or daily basis? How many of us do that? That's great. That's great. This is so important. I would want us to take this from today. Just go home, sit down with your spouse, sit down with your family, with your kids, and write down exactly what you are spending your money on. You'll be surprised. Just look at your bank statements and look at how much did I spend on groceries today. The reason I'm saying that is it will tell you who you are and where the issues in our lives are. I'm saying this from experience, and I'm telling you the common issues that we see in everyday lives is because we don't grasp the effectiveness of budgeting. I can be sleeping and I can still tell you how much I'm going to spend on groceries this month. You can ask me anything in our budget personally, I'll be able to tell you. And I'll be able to pinpoint areas. So the goal for us today is how can we improve Amanda's budget? Even though she's able to balance it out, life is not like that. There could be a month where something would happen that she will not be able to afford. Maybe going out, maybe clothing. So how do we build a budget that is reflective? And also in the Christian context, how do we build a budget that is acceptable in the eyes of the Lord? In here, I don't know if any of you have spotted. Sorry, could you go back to the expenditure? There's nothing in here that talks about our devotion to God, which is what tithing and giving. Our budget should also reflect that as well. So I have a question for you. How can we improve this budget? Is there an area in here that you think, oh, Amanda is spending too much on that? Or you can tweak some of the items, or you don't need this. And it goes back to the question, our needs and wants. Any suggestions? I know it's a hard question, but okay. Yeah. Exactly, yeah. So one of the things that I always talk to my people whenever we do go through this on a personal level is how realistic can Amanda cut down on these bills? Consider if she has a contract, is a contract due, can she review it so that she can get back, a much cheaper phone cost? Or can she go on to a SIM-only contract? There's so many things, as I said even earlier. Is there a need for me to get a new phone that will cost me £60 or £100? It's living a life that is reflective in a way that it would enable us to be diligent and a good steward for God's gifts. Are you with me? Do you understand where we're going with this? So If we cannot have a strong budget, we will not be able to, one, multiply what we have. There is no other sources of funds coming to help you. Their multiplication comes from within, comes from what we have. So if we cannot manage that properly, how do we expect us to, when you look at other people, oh, they're doing really well with their finances, and they're making investment, in quotes, outwardly, it looks they're doing well, but we may be thinking, oh, I need to do the same thing, but you've not grasped, you've not diagnosed yourself on which areas you're spending your income on. These conversations are hard. These causes marriages to fail. When you look at the divorce rates and what causes of marriages, most of it is money. It's because we don't have a clear, visible, husbands and wives and family, kids. We don't have a budget, and nobody knows where we're spending our monies on. I want us to go back home today, sit down with your family, your kids, your spouse, and let's draw a budget. Write it down. There are many apps in the App Store that can even help you budget. Some banks have some tools that can help you plan your budget. I won't make any recommendation because I don't know your personal circumstances for me to make that assessment, but there are resources out there. But the simple thing is you can take a piece of paper, write down your income, write down everything that you spend on, and then you will see that, okay, is this needed? Is this what I want to do? And you can start making a plan. For us to even begin to talk about the other things in our agenda, you need to start with this, because you cannot talk about retirement if you've not been effectively managing your money. You cannot talk about investment if you're not effectively being good stewards of our finances. And it's the fact. It's the truth. So please, if we go to the next slide, thank you very much. So I've given a summary of some tips of effective management, but this calls us for us to be a steward of God's blessings. As Matthew chapter 25, verse 14, verse 30 says, it talks about the gifts that God has given, the talents. It reminds us that we should be a mere caretaker of God's resources, and it's our responsibility to manage these wisely. So we need to track our income. We need to track our expenses. We need to categorize our expenses in a way that we'll be able to understand which areas that we need to eradicate waste. This is a hard decision. There may be something that you're spending your money on that is not needed in your life. Okay, so we need to track that. We need to set goals. So what are some of the goals that we could set? Goals for retirement, goals for investment, goals for our children, goals to support their education when they turn 18 and they're ready to go to university. There is a fund ready for them to support them to go to university. You could also say goals for a holiday. That's fine. Goals to support their work in the church. There's so many goals that we can set, but we can't do that if we have not grasped our effective management of our budget. And then next, talked about prioritizing. It's very important where we need to prioritize savings. Savings is one thing that I remember in those days in Ghana, they called susu. I don't know if any of you have ever had susu accounts in Ghana. These are very important. The reason I say savings, in every bank there are savings accounts. Every savings account has a little bit of interest that gives on top of that. So for example, if you're able to save £10, a savings account may give you 1%. That is better than nothing, right? And the Bible reflects that. Even God expects us to, when the person who had that one talent didn't do anything with that, God said, why didn't you even put it into account that you would get an interest on that? So I always talk about having savings. You can segregate when you go into the next slide, please. So you have multiple accounts. You can have an account for your everyday spending. You can have an account for your savings and future goals. It's really good to have that so that whenever, let's say you can have savings for a rainy day when something is to happen. Let's say a car was to break down, then you tap into that. But there are other clever ways of going about. You can have insurance that pays out for car breakdown cover and all that. You can have savings for family, illness. You can have savings for so many other things. So categorize your savings. Utilize the bank accounts that are there. There are so many banks that offer better rates on savings. These are the things that we need to use to help us be a good stewards of the monies that we have and be content. I hope you're with me. So, and also review and adjust your expenses regularly. What that means is that whatever I spent the money on last month, it may be different from this month. And I've seen a difference in my expenses. As you all know, we recently had a baby. My expenses have gone up the roof having a baby. So my expenses last month, I was able to save a lot, but now with a baby, it's come down. So I need to go back to my expenditure and look at which areas I can, eradicate waste. So review your expenses on a continuous basis. Do this as a couple, do this as a family, and get your kids involved. This is the only way we are teaching them effective management. So by the time they grow up, they'll be able to know the importance of money. If they were to spend the money on something, they would think twice about it. They'll start looking at what is the importance of it. So review your expenses regularly. And if you need, seek professional advice as well. And we can do this together, okay? So let's go to the next topic, investment. So as I said, investment is one of the things that is everybody's having a buzz. Oh, I need to invest in this, buy this stock or do whatever. But I just sit back and observe, is there a need for me to even start investment if I cannot even understand my own budget, as I said? Have I grasped the importance of investment in my life? In here, the standard definition of investment is defined as the commitment of resource to achieve later benefits. So if investment is you're investing money, you're looking at achieving better returns in the future. If investment is your time, you're looking at achieving something out of that time. You see, so it's not only about money. But in this context, when we go to the next slide, there's so many different asset classes. What I mean is there's so many investment tools that are available to us. But what I'll try to emphasize on is there are many dangers associated to this. It's very important because I showed the slide about coveting character. When working in investment banking those days, you need to have a certain character to be in that environment. The greed, the aggression, because all we are thinking is trying to make the next billion, the next million. But is this what God is calling us to do? So we need to revert back to what Hebrews was saying. All right? So these asset classes, I'm going to talk about them. But the point of me talking about this will be revealed later, where even in the FCA, what governs our financial institution, they always warn people of these investment choices. And I'll make a detriment to you all if I don't warn you about these things. So the first asset class is stocks, shares, and equities. They all mean the same thing. Basically, let's say, what is one company? Let's say Google or Apple. Let's use Apple, for example. If you have stocks or shares in Apple, it means you have an ownership, let's say a percentage. So you could have 1% in Apple. That's an investment. So whenever Apple is to make revenue or profits, they would give you returns because you're an owner in that business. So that's the first asset class. There's bonds. Bonds are basically debts issued by governments or corporations that helps them to finance projects. So something like in the HS2 project, the government can issue a bond, and then that will raise the capital to help build railways, infrastructures that we see in this world. There's also index funds. So index funds is like a combination of bonds and equities and shares that is pulled together and sold on the market. Hedge funds are basically funds that are managed by a professional or a fund manager that covers a range of assets. So it could be non-traditional assets, it could be properties, it could be equities, it could be bonds, so it could be so many other things. And one interesting thing is watches. There are some watches that are valuable. So if you have possession of that, it drives an interest. Fine arts as well is one of the areas as well. Crypto, which is an area that has been talked about, so digital currency. But one of the things that I haven't put on here is you. The reason I'm saying you are the prize. What is the gifts that God has put in my life? How am I cultivating those gifts? How am I utilizing those gifts? Because all these things, as I said earlier, it doesn't matter. We came to meet them, and we will leave with them. We will leave this world with these things left behind. So your salvation is the most important thing. You. Am I loving God, or am I loving the treasures that we see around us? The buildings, the monies, our watches, whatever that is taking the throne of your life. It's very important to review ourselves. So I have a video that I would like us to play that gives us a quick history about what investment is. So if you can bring that up, please. Thank you very much. If it's not, I'll just. It's right. Okay. Thank you. whilst we wait for the video to come up. So investment is the extended version of when you have determined your budget, and let's say you have a disposable income for, let's say, for example, £10. What can I do with this £10? There's various things that I could do. You can invest it into the future. Let's say if you have a child, of your children, of your child, you can invest it in your retirement. You can invest it in a savings for, let's say, for the future if something was to happen. And also you can invest it in these asset classes as well. But there's always important to understand what these asset classes and how am I covered? I'll cover those areas in a second. You need to know what you are investing in. So if we pick, for example, the shares and equity, if you pick, let's say, Apple, do I understand what Apple does? Do I understand their mission? Is it ethical? Is it a company that reflects my belief in God? So we don't just get up and just invest in any company. You need to have that alignment with these companies. So thank you. You can start playing now. Thank you very much.
In the 1600s, the Dutch East India Company employed hundreds of ships to trade gold, porcelain, spices, and silks around the globe. But running this massive operation wasn't cheap. In order to fund their expensive voyages, the company turned to private citizens, individuals who could invest money to support the trip in exchange for a share of the ship's profits. This practice allowed the company to afford even grander voyages, increasing profits for both themselves and their savvy investors. Selling these shares in coffee houses and shipping ports across the continent, the Dutch East India Company unknowingly invented the world's first stock market. Since then, companies have been collecting funds from willing investors to support all kinds of businesses. And today, the stock market has schools, careers, and even whole television channels dedicated to understanding it. But the modern stock market is significantly more complicated than its original incarnation. So how do companies and investors use the market today? Let's imagine a new coffee company that decides to launch on the market. First, the company will advertise itself to big investors. If they think the company is a good idea, they get the first crack at investing and then sponsor the company's initial public offering, or IPO. This launches the company onto the official public market, where any company or individual who believes the business could be profitable might buy a stock. Buying stocks makes those investors partial owners in the business. Their investment helps the company to grow, and as it becomes more successful, more buyers may see potential and start buying stocks. As demand for those stocks increases, so does their price, increasing the cost for prospective buyers and raising the value of the company's stocks people already own. For the company, this increased interest helps fund new initiatives and also boosts its overall market value by showing how many people are willing to invest in their idea. However, if for some reason a company starts to seem less profitable, the reverse can also happen. If investors think their stock value is going to decline, they'll sell their stocks with the hopes of making a profit before the company loses more value. As stocks are sold and demand for the stock goes down, the stock price falls, and with it, the company's market value. This can leave investors with big losses, unless the company starts to look profitable again. This seesaw of supply and demand is influenced by many factors. Companies are under the unavoidable influence of market forces, such as the fluctuating price of materials, changes in production technology, and the shifting costs of labor. Investors may be worried about changes in leadership, bad publicity, or larger factors like new laws and trade policies. And of course, plenty of investors are simply ready to sell valuable stocks and pursue personal interests. All these variables cause day-to-day noise in the market, which can make companies appear more or less successful. And in the stock market, appearing to lose value often leads to losing investors, and in turn, losing actual value. Human confidence in the market has the power to trigger everything from economic booms to financial crises. And this difficult to track variable is why most professionals promote reliable long-term investing over trying to make quick cash. However, experts are constantly building tools in efforts to increase their chances of success in this highly unpredictable system. But the stock market is not just for the rich and powerful. With the dawn of the internet, everyday investors can buy stocks in many of the exact same ways a large investor would. And as more people educate themselves about this complex system, they too can trade stocks, support the businesses they believe in, and pursue their financial goals. The first step is getting invested. Interested in pursuing your own financial goals? Download a free audio version of The Richest Man in Babylon on audible.com/TED.
Thank you. So as you can see, it gives you a clear explanation of how investment started and what the background to it. So basically, you'll be investing in companies, but to take it a step further, as I said, you need to understand what the mission of that company is. As Christians, we want to be part of companies that are ethical, companies that are promoting the beliefs that we have, you see. And as I said in the video, nobody can predict what is going to happen. If somebody came to you today and said, I know that if you did X, Y, Z, this was going to happen in the market, they are lying to you. This is a field that you need to prepare yourself for. So I'll talk about how to guard yourself against these things in a second. Can we move to the next slide, please? So before you invest, you need to ask yourself why we should invest, or why am I investing? Investing overall has a positive impact on our financial well-being. Why? Because it gives us a financial security. It provides us a sense of security and building a well-diversified investment portfolio and safety for unexpected expenses and emergencies. So there are clever ways that you can invest that will protect yourself from any unforeseen circumstance, which I'll talk about in a second. The next is also helping you to plan for retirement. Please go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Why we invest. It helps you to plan for retirement for the future. It helps you to diversify and also wealth accumulation. And here, there are so many dangers when we talk about wealth accumulation. We need to make sure that we are not drawn into the love of trying to accumulate stocks, bonds, or whatever that you're looking to invest in. We need to go back to our basis as we established from the start. And also, whatever goals that you set, you need to find the importance of achieving your goals within the remit of what you have. So, and part of this reason is because whether it's buying a house or starting a business or funding your children's education, investing can help you accelerate the necessary funds. So if you build an investment funds for, let's say, for your child's future, by the time the child is of age and ready to use that funds, it helps them to get even onto the property ladder. It helps them with their education cost. It helps them to start even a business and be self-sustainable. So these things are all activities that we can start doing when we start investing. Could we go to the next slide, please? So in the Financial Conduct Authority, it is required of us to talk about these measures, the keys, steps to take before you invest. So as I said earlier, you can't just stand up and, oh, I'm going to invest. You can do that, but if you haven't gotten your immediate finances in order, what happens? You invest in, let's say, Apple, and Apple went bust. That means you've lost your money. And my budget is not effective in such a way that when Apple goes bust, I've lost everything, and that leads to depression, that leads to suicide. And I believe we all hear when the financial crash happened, a lot of people killed themselves because they put all their hopes, all their wealth into investment in the stock market. So you need to make sure that your immediate finances are in order. It's important to do that. And also you need to build an emergency cash fund. So as I said earlier, have a savings account. So this cash fund could be used if, let's say, you were to be laid off from work. It would cover you on your expenses to your backup getting a new job, or it could be used for emergencies, family emergencies, or whichever emergencies that comes up. And the next thing is one of the things that God wants us about, debts. The debts, in a way, this is a subject that we can spend so many. People will have, oh, there's some debts that are good, there's some debts that are not good. In the outside world, it's very controlled with debts. So how do we guard ourselves with debts? So for one of the things that we must do as Christians is understand, what debts am I getting into? Is it a mortgage debt? Is it a credit card debt? Is it just a loan debt to buy a car or any other things that we want to finance? And how am I going to repay this debt? Quickly. Do we have a plan for our debts? Because sometimes we get a credit card, and I've done it. We spend the limit on it, and we don't think about how we're going to repay it. And it takes us 10 years to pay off a simple credit card debt. So if you want to get to investing, how are you going to do that when you've got all these debts? So it's important to clear off these debts. Start from a basis where you are able to invest without any pressures of debts hanging over you. So it's important to have that in mind. And also contribute to your pensions. Pensions is something that is not talked about most. Even from the time we turn 18, we start working, or working age 16 or going upwards, you need to start planning for retirement. There's always a saying, my mom always said, my retirement plan is you, my children. And it's true. In our community, we think that, okay, our kids are our retirement plan. But actually, we need to start thinking about how are we going to relieve our children from the pressures of taking care of us financially when we retire. So if we are working, do my company has a pension that I can contribute to personally? If you're working, am I paying into the state pension as well? Or if I don't have these options, you can take a pension retirement fund that you can start paying into. So by the time you get to the retirement age, you have a bulk of financial aid for you to support your life as well and your family. So it's important to have these key things in place before you even start thinking about investments. Okay? So let's go to the next slide. When you are ready to invest, this is something, I haven't even made this up. This is the Financial Conduct Authority. Go onto their website, and this information are there. They are helping people to protect themselves from getting into investment without thinking about what am I getting into. So here, you need to ask yourself, am I comfortable with the level of risk? Can I afford to lose my money if something was to happen? Okay? Do I understand the investment, and could I get my money out easily? Are my investment regulated by the FCA? Am I protected if the investment provider goes out of business or bankruptcy? And should I get a financial advice? These questions, you need to be able to answer it for yourself effectively before you start investing. It's very important. And I've seen many people get into investment without having their basis right. So it's very important to have an understanding of what you're investing. There are some investment companies that are not regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. you need to watch out for these things. So here are some practical things that you can do. If you haven't heard of stocks and shares ISA, this is one of the things. There's so many banks or providers that provide these opportunities. And you can look at this on the market. So stocks and share ISAs. This is a government-issued stocks, and so it's protected within the Financial Conduct Authority. Okay, so in a financial year which runs from April to April, you can contribute up to 20,000, and your money is safe in there. And each financial year, you can keep on rolling that amount. Okay, so with this allows you to invest in different businesses if you're interested in, but it's protected from capital gains tax. It's protected from, if you were to make any profits, you're protected. You will not pay tax on these stuff in the investment that you chose through these ISA providers. So on the next slide, it says determine your investment goals and risk tolerance. So what that means is there are certain businesses or there are certain stocks that are deemed very risky. Are you willing to take that risk? Is it worth me doing that as a Christian? What is my goal? Is it my goal for retirement, or my goal is to have my child secured? Okay, I'm willing to invest in a lower risk that will guarantee me that by the time my child is of age, they will be able to have something ready for them to propel their life. So you need to understand these risk tolerance. You need to understand the different types of stocks and share ISAs. What that means is that there are self-selected stocks and share ISAs. So the ones that you choose yourself, so I can choose to invest in this company or that company. Or there are some where it's managed by the provider or the business. So if you were to go with a bank, for example, they will manage your stocks and share for you. And obviously, you'll be charged a fee and other charges that are associated to that. And there are some stocks and share that ISAs that are already made. So for example, they package a group of companies and they'll sell it to you that this is the package. This is what you can contribute your stocks and shares into. And then it will tell you what your risk tolerance are. So do your research. Have a conversation with people, your advisors, and they'll be able to walk you through what is suitable for you based on your individual circumstance as well. And diversify your investment. One of the things that the Bible talks extensively is we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. So it's not wise to put all your funds in one particular company or one particular area. So find a way effectively to diversify your investment when you come to that as well. Let's go to the next. I'll talk about tax later on in family planning. So I've written this slide, biblical investment principles. And this is very dear to my heart. The reason is, as Christians, we need to understand what our purpose is and how we can go about living this life that is free from the love of money, as I mentioned before, and also enable us to be content. So these principles are, from my point of view, a guiding steps to help you invest, help you guide you from any form of greed, any form of activities that would prevent you from seeing the importance of your life and taking you away from the love of money. So the first principles, as you can see, is diversification, spreading the risk wisely, and that comes from Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verse 2. And that in Ecclesiastes, it basically says, and just some paraphrasing, invest in 7 ventures or 8 if you can, because we do not know when the disaster will happen. So it's important to have that. The next principle talks about having a long-term vision, patience, and persistence. if you are greed, if you feel that, if you have a greedy heart, you will not have patience. You will always be looking at ways to make quick cash and here and there. But God is reminding us to have patience and persistence and a long-term vision. For example, if you're planning or investing for retirement, whatever the price of your stocks does in the next 10, 20 years, you do not care because you've made the right choices. The future is what you're looking at, okay? So have that patience, as Proverbs chapter 21, verse 5 says. And I've always proud to talk about ethical investing, honoring the values as Christians. It's important. You don't want to invest in a company as Christians that promotes certain things that are contrary to what the Bible talks about. So we need to make sure that we are investing in these companies personally that aligns to our beliefs and faith. It's important to know that. The next slide. And we need to seek counsel. We sometimes feel that, we are shy or whatever reason why we want to do things by ourselves. It's important to always seek counsel. It's so that we will guide ourselves from all sort of issues or traps that the world puts down for us. And ultimately, we need to be content. Contentment and finding joy in sufficiency. So even if it's £1 that I've made today, we need to be happy about that. We don't need to be sad and wonder why other people are making millions and I've just made £1. We need to find that joy in the little that we have and keep on being persistent and keep on being diligent with the things that we have. That is the only way that we can love God. We need to detach ourselves from the love of money. I'll keep on saying this to have that drummed in our minds. So family planning, that's the next conversation. It's growing up. I don't know for our various household, but I know for my household when I was growing up, the subject about money is not really talked about extensively, but it's important to have this conversation with our families, with our kids, and plan for the future. Plan effectively. We all remember the story when the king had a dream and he saw 7 cows, Slim eating the big cows, and the story wavered all the way to having the people of Egypt saving the weeds, saving the food for the rainy day. If that vision didn't come through Joseph, how were they able to interpret the dream and to help them when there was famine? That is the same thing when we talk about family planning. Family planning is vital for the process for ensuring a long-term financial well-being and stability of your family. So it's important that as a family, you need to sit down and think, what is the plan for us? Where are we going as a family? On the next slide, you see that there are various income variabilities when it comes to family. So as a husband, my income comes in. There could be some time I'll be earning less. How are we going to combat that? Or there could be a period where I'm not having a job. How are we going to combat that? There's so many unexpected things that happens in life. So having a plan and being able to review it helps us to combat these situations. So on the next slide, I talk about the components of family planning. The first goes back to budgeting, your expenses and management. The second, having an emergency fund. The third is debt management. The fourth is savings and investment and planning. The fifth in insurance planning. The second is education planning, estate planning, tax planning, financial goal setting, and reviewing and adjusting. There's a lot in here. But today I want to focus on one thing. There's some of them that we do extensively well, but there's one area that I think, from reviewing from my experiences and conversations with so many people, is insurance planning. We have insurance for our car. We have insurance for even our phones. What else do we have insurance for? Houses, so many things. But why do we not have insurance for ourselves? Why are we not looking at insurance for ourselves? These are avenues that the banking system has created to help us plan for our future. So why are we not utilizing these elements, if I may say? It's important. It's quite sad to say this, but and I'm saying this from experience and bravery. Maybe a family member may die and they leave with nothing. But if with an insurance, you are able to help your families, your children, even your children's children, as the Bible says. You need to think about your children's children, not even your children, your children's children, your generations. Having an insurance helps you to plan for your children's children. What am I leaving behind for my family? So having a life insurance is a great way of planning for your family. There's so many types of insurance planning. So as you can see, the list is long. Critical illness, income protection, health insurance, disability insurance, property insurance, liability, education and travel insurance. But I've circled here life insurance. That's one of the things that we as people need to have that as part of our family planning. I know it's a sad thing to say, I need to die before my family would get X amount of money to support them for their journey going forward. But this is what the will of God is calling us to do. How am I adequately planning for my new child, my wife, and my family? On the next slide, there's many scenarios where a family would need a life insurance. Primarily, most of the time is death, but you can also have an insurance that covers the funeral arrangement of your life. And that relieves pressure from your family trying to save up to cover the cost of your funeral. So you are planning yourself to bring protection for the ones that your loved ones that you're leaving behind, not leaving them with burden, not leaving them with a mountain of debt to clear when you die. But it's a sad thing, but also it's the truth. We need to face reality. As I said earlier, we came into this world with nothing. We will leave this world with nothing. So why do we bother ourselves with so many things? Why don't we plan our lives in a way that we are bringing security to the families that we love, our loved ones, even our friends, and also to the church? I quite remember in Glasgow, a lady died and left a huge sum of money for the church. So even in your family planning, you can plan to leave a substantial gift to the church as well, not just your family. So these are all part of the plannings that I would encourage us to start thinking about. When we move, let's move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Thank you. So in here, you can see, you can plan for your children's future, okay? So one of the things that you can do for your children is looking at a child ISA. So it works similar with the stocks and share ISA as well, where in this it's protected. The government will protect your funds in these accounts. So if a bank was to go bust, you are protected up to 85,000 per lender, okay? So you're protected in these ISAs. We have child stocks and shares ISAs. We have savings accounts that you can open for your child. Thinking about that now, I need to even open these accounts for my child to start planning for their future. You can start looking at regular savings account in a way, or a bank account. When the child turns 16, the account reverts to their name, so that it teaches them of banking and how to utilize the funds as well. So I've covered an area of the stocks and share ISA for a child. These stocks and share ISA, you can contribute up to $9,000 every year, and it's tax-free on any capital gains as well. And there's a whole lot. When the child turns 18, they would get access to the money, and that will give them a head start in their future. Okay, so these are the sort of plannings that we need to have for our family. So what are the benefits of family planning? It brings security. We don't have to worry of, if something was to happen to me, what will my family, what positions am I living with my family? Maybe I may have a mortgage and I die. How will my family be able to afford that mortgage going forward? Having a life insurance, you can create your policy such a way that it covers the cost for, let's say, your mortgage and your livelihood to support your family. This also reduces stress in a way that you're thinking about your family's future. And it helps you achieve your goals and also improve your financial literacy as well. Let's move on to the next slide, which is retirement. Retirement is one of the things that I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this, because I know this is a subject that sometimes we don't really talk about that much. Retirement is a process of determining the income goals and the actions and the decision necessary to achieve those goals when we are no longer able to work, or we've reached the age where we are not working age, if I may say. But why am I bringing this in our conversations? Retirement is an activity that needs to be started from the jump. Whenever you started working, you need to start thinking about your retirement goals, because it, as I said earlier, it relieves the pressure on your families when you retire. Now, when you look at the full the amounts that you receive from the government, state pension, the last time I checked, it was $221 a week. If I put myself in this situation, am I able to afford the things that I do in life with this amount, with the cost of living going up and down? So it's important to plan for your retirement. It's important to plan adequately so that you will not be a burden onto others. Can we go to the next slide, please? So key components of retirement is setting a retirement goal, estimating your retirement expenses, and assessing your income sources. So that is very important. So I know I've retired, so what will be my source of income? Creating a savings plan and managing assets and risk, and your tax planning and your estate planning. On the next slide, you'll see here there's different demographics. The likelihood of passing down in inheritance, down to the generation. You can see on here the different demographics. Can you go back on the next slide, if you don't mind? Or go forward a bit, sorry. One more. Okay, don't worry, maybe it's not on there. I'll come back to that in a second, sorry. Okay, go back a slide. Thank you. Okay, so steps of effective retirement planning. So as I said, you start early. You start from the time you started. If you haven't started planning for retirement, start now. It's never too late to start your retirement planning. have a regular review, and also seek counsel. Seek counsel. It's very important, okay? Because if you are able to plan for your retirement, it would help you to understand how you effectively budget now. So let's say I am planning for my retirement. I want to retire by age 40. If that happens, what should I be doing now to help me retire by that age? Should I be saving? Should I be having a particular insurance? Should I be investing in something to help me retire, so that when I retire, I do not become a burden onto my family, and so have you. So you see, so planning for your retirement gives you a sense of what you should be doing now to help you when you get to that age or that level or that time. So if you have not looked at what your retirement fund would be, or calculated how much will I get if I was to retire, let's say now, then you need to have that review. You need to look at how much I've contributed to the state pension. You need to look at how much I've contributed to my workplace pension or any private pensions that I've contributed to. You need to look at these figures so that you'll be able to have a clear understanding of my retirement goals. On the next slide, I've circled lifetime ISA. Lifetime ISA is one of the practical ways you can plan for retirement. What this does is it gives you the flexibility in the lifetime ISA, you can contribute up to $4,000 a year, and the government gives you a 25% bonus. So every year you are saving into this lifetime ISA. So I don't know how many years, let's say 20, 30 years, you save into this ISA. There will be a chunk of funds ready for you to help with your retirement. Please go to the next slide, which talks about lifetime ISA. Yeah, so you can see if you were to save, let's say 4,000, and the government gives you 25%, which would be £1,000. For that year, you are saved 5,000. Let's say you keep on saving 5,000 each year, it accumulates, and by the time you retire, it would help you to afford the things that, the living standards that you currently, or to help you with your retirement goals in the future. So these are some of the instruments that are out there to help you with your retirement goals. The other benefits of lifetime ISA is if you were to, let's say you wanted to buy a house, you can use that account to also purchase your house as well. So it gives you flexibility, buying a house, and also, you know, for your retirement goals in the future. But there's a caveat which I've underlined there. It's for under 40s. You see, you need to have this account before you turn 40. So any age after that, you will not be eligible to have that account. So you'd have to look for other options, contributing to other retirement funds. So it's so important to think about your retirement now, so that when you are planning your everyday, weekly, and monthly budget, you'll be able to apportion a section of your income for the future. If you're self-employed, you need to speak to an accountant or a financial advisor to help you structure your business in a way you can also afford your retirement plan. If you're working for companies, most companies have private retirement funds that takes money out of your income automatically before you get paid. You can also increase the percentage of your income that goes to your retirement. It's very important. So let's have a plan, build a plan together with your family, with your kids, or if you're alone with yourselves, what would be my retirement plans and what do I need to be doing now for the future? And finally, inheritance. We're almost there, so give me about 10 minutes and we will be done. Inheritance is a touchy subject because somebody has to die before you can inherit something. But it's very important. It's a mark of a true Christian, planning who will inherit let's say your assets, or who is going to be taking over. Inherit refers to assets and properties that individuals receive from a deceased person, typically a family member or a close relative. So there's a wide range of things that you can pass down. I could pass down my ring to my son, and they can keep on passing those things down. So it doesn't necessarily need to be money. It's important, if you're 18 and above, it's important to have an inheritance plan for your life and for your family. So let's look at the framework, the legal framework of inheritance. This framework is subject to your life circumstance and your personal circumstance. So one thing that would work for me doesn't necessarily mean it would work for you. So your will should be tailor made. So whenever you're creating a will, do not copy what other people are doing. Create a will that is reflective of your life. Trust is sort of like a legal entity that holds and manages assets on behalf of a beneficiary. So if you have assets, you can put your assets in a trust. These are legal things that you can seek advice from an accountant or a legal professional. And your succession plans. This is a very interesting area in the legal framework. I remember there's a story where, let's say a man had already had kids, and he married a lady who already had kids as well. So they both came together with kids. And down the line, they had a joint child together, okay? And the lady died. When the lady died, automatically, everything that she owns goes to the husband, so that's fine. And when the husband died, everything went to the husband's kids, but not the wife's kids. You see, the reason is because they didn't have a succession plan. They didn't have a retirement plan for their lives. They thought that, oh, it was okay because we are family and married. When the husband dies, all the kids will benefit. But actually, because the husband died last, in legal standards, everything goes to the husband kids and the joint kid that they had together. So it's important, whatever your life circumstances, it's important to have that plan written down and stamped and sealed, so that you are protecting your family, you're protecting the loved ones. So on the next slide, Proverbs talks about a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And having a good legal framework is a good way to leave your inheritance for your family. It's a good practice to have. We need to understand that our lives, we are all not going to be on earth forever. We will there's going to be times where we will leave this life, and we're not going to leave with this life with our monies, with our wealth, with whatever we have. So why don't we have a plan of how we're going to live a life that will help the next generation? So it's a good practice to have. So on the next slide, practical things that we can consider: estate planning, updating your document, and professional advice. One of the things when you click on the next, it will highlight tax implications. Tax is one of the things that in our country, when somebody dies and they have assets and they were to sell that, the taxman comes for their portion. So you need to have a plan of how you are going to shield yourself from these things. It's not avoiding tax. There's all these legal structures that you can put your wealth or your assets to make sure that your spouse or your family members are protected from these implications. So when you click on the next slide, so there are various ways to enable your families to have a good tax strategies. So some is the annual gift exclusions, lifetime gifts, tax exemptions, trust, charitable giving, family liabilities, education and medical expenses, state-specific strategies, qualified personal residence trust, and life insurance, which I talked about earlier. These are all strategies that you can use, but you can't start doing these strategies if you do not have a plan and a good budget. So I have a rhetorical question that I would like to ask you. What can I pass down to my next generation or to the next generation? What am I doing now to build, to have a good family planning, to have a good retirement, and to have a good inheritance structure? What in my budget that am I doing on a regular basis that would help me pass down something to the next generation? Statistically, our community, we do not have, we are the least, I'm sorry to say, when you look at the stats, 30% of us pass down something to the next generation compared to other ethnical groups as well. So it's a practice that I want us to start doing to enable us to pass down something that would enable our families to have a footing in life. So I've created this age bracket thing, some of the things that you should be doing at a certain age. So from age 0 to 17, you need to develop a budget mindset, education on managing finance effectively. So there are many tools out there that will help you budget your life. And there are many accounts. And I put on here, parents are to be the custodians of the child's account or banking account until they are 18, or for some accounts you can be 16, and that passes down to the child. So some of the things that you can start doing as parents is child ISAs, savings accounts, and various investment accounts. So seek counsel from the banks. Okay? Between the age of 18 and 30, you should have confidence in managing your finances effectively, understanding what debt is, understanding the pitfalls of investment, and actively planning for your retirement. So you need to have a will. If you need a trust, you can do that. And from the age of 31 to 40, you need to have an established financial plan for your retirement, effective financial management, which will require you having a will or a trust. So if today you don't have one, I would encourage you to go and make one for your family. So one of the things that you can start looking at is your ISAs, your lifetime ISA, where you can open one, start contributing to it, and that could help you plan for your retirement. That could help you plan for your family as well. Insurance. Insure your life so that whenever something was to happen to you, you know your family is looked after. I've put on there the cutoff for having a lifetime ISA is age 40. So after that, you will not be able to, qualify for that. When in the age bracket of 41 to 54, I've used the word proactive and aggressive. You need to be proactive and aggressively contributing to your retirement account. This is a time when you need to plan your plan that you've established earlier. You are actively making sure that you are paying into these accounts so that when you get to retirement, you don't become a burden onto others, and you'll be able to leave something for others as well. And from the age between 55 to 64, equally proactively paying into your retirement account. Any large debts have been paid off, something like a mortgage that has been paid off. And so these are sort of things that you can start contributing and passing it on to your family. So you can have your private pension, your current account, your savings accounts, your ISAs, and your insurance policy. So you can have an insurance policy for the future for your health policies. These are sort of things that helps you to cover yourselves. And when 65 and over, you start enjoying the benefits of all the planning and the successions that you've done over the years. So I'm going to summarize everything. I know I've talked about a lot of things, but these 6 points here summarizes what we have to understand. So the first is to keep our lives free from the love of money and be satisfied with what we have, and set smart savings and investment goals. I put here, remember to love God and not love money, because there is always pitfalls with these things, okay? And track your income and expenses and adjust accordingly. So if you have a family plan, make sure that your budget is reflective of that. If you have a retirement goal, make sure that your budget is reflecting of that. If you decide to have a plan of taking up an insurance for yourself, make sure your budget is reflective of that as well. And furthermore, complete the key steps to take before you invest, and understand and know the dangers of investment. And establish a financial family plan. Remember, review and adjust your financial family plan on a regular basis whenever there's changes in your life. So now that I have a baby, I need to review my financial plan to make sure that I've covered my child. When in the future God blesses us with another child, I need to keep reviewing that. Whenever there's any life-changing events in our lives, you need to go back to the drawing board to make sure that you've covered all the bases. And I leave you with this: establish a will, a trust, and a succession plan to make sure that your family is covered. So I leave you with this verse, 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 7. It says, "We brought nothing into the world, so we can take nothing out." So everything that we do with our financial health, we need to have this at the back of our minds. We need to take away the love of money, and we need to focus on loving God. And through that, we will be able to understand, diagnose ourselves, our budget, in a way that whatever we are spending, we have a plan for our family, we have a plan for our future retirement, we have a plan to be content and be satisfied with what we have. Because we will leave this world with everything that we see. So why do we covet? You see, so let's remember these principles whenever we're doing our budget, so that we live a content and a happy life through Christ Jesus. Thank you very much for listening. I may take 1 or 2 questions due to time, but however, please reach out to me. We can have one-to-one and talk about these concepts, and we can guide you through it. I know it's a journey, so the floor is open for 1 or 2 questions, and I can see your hands. Ma, please. Thank you.
This is very important talk. It's taught us a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have 2 questions. The first one is, well, if you look at the color of my hair, you will understand where my questions are coming from. With regard to pensions and inheritance and stuff like that, what are the kinds of taxes that, as we live here, the British government will take from our savings and pensions and investments and so that? Secondly, I've just been told this morning that if you have property and you want to bequeath it to your children and descendants, you can avoid the whole property being taxed, or you can avoid your investments being taxed by bequeathing it to them as a gift long before
Yeah.
you pass.
Yeah.
So is it possible for you to explain those kinds of things?
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much for the question. I hope, I don't know if you can pull up that slide, but I talked about inheritance tax strategies. There are so many strategies that we can use to help us with the tax that goes to the family when we pass on. So one of the things that you mentioned, not to go to actually personal questions, Ma, but one of the things, there's so many strategies that you can do. So the annual gift exclusion, so you can look at those kind of strategies when you're passing on a gift to your family. There's always a cutoff point with that. Sometimes there's a limit that you can send. So let's say in here you can have 17,000. That's the cutoff that you can pass on to your family. There's also the lifetime gift tax exemptions as well. So that is also a strategy that your accountant can help you utilize. There's also a trust, so you can put all your assets in a trust, and you can name a succession. Let's say me, if you want me to be your trust succession, you can put my name down, and that's a way of passing that assets to your family member or the person you've named to be the successor of that trust. So there's so many strategies. They are great. Thank you for pulling that up. So these strategies are there for you to utilize. It's best to seek counsel to determine which of these strategies can be applicable for yourself specifically. So from what I gather from your specific circumstance, you can look at personal residence trust that allows you to transfer your home to your children, okay? So you're looking at your property, your house, so you can look at that strategy with a counsel of an accountant to structure those things for you specifically. You can look at state-specific strategies that enables you to understand any specific assets that you have that can be used to pass on to your family without any tax implications. So speak to an advisor and let them review your situation, what assets, the timeline, your age, your family's age. There are certain cutoff points, so it's important to get that sorted as soon as possible so that you lock it in for their future. Okay, so I hope I answered that question for you.
And one of the strategies is charitable giving, isn't it?
Yes,
give to the church.
Yeah, give to the church. That's true. As I said earlier, these are also important to structure that in our planning, in our budgeting. And when we look at the compass of the life structure of what the Bible talks about, generosity is very important. Generosity, missions, budgeting, wealth, and these are all areas that the Bible talks about. So it's important to have that involved in our estate planning as well. Thank you. Is there any other question? Yes, ma. Oh, there's a mic coming for you. Thank you.
Being a nurse, I have experienced a lot of our old people. They cry a lot when they have to go to the nursing home, and then they have to assess their properties, and in the long run it means they get nothing. They have to sell their properties and then put them in the nursing home and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
So if you can elaborate.
Yeah, definitely. So I talked about insurance, okay? So this is why it's important to start early as we are now. Insurance is one of the things that you can guard yourself for the future. So I had a long list of insurance that you can go and buy. For example, I'm just going to pull the list up. Just give me a second. So we had insurance planning types. We had the life insurance, the critical illness insurance, income protection, health insurance. So specifically health insurance, you can take a policy that will structure in such a way that whenever you're ill, it covers the cost for your health for the future, okay? And with regarding to your properties as well, you can structure your will, your trust, or succession plan in a way that it covers that, make sure that my property goes to whoever the succession is. So you need to build that plan, have it written, have it agreed and sealed, so that whenever the person goes to a retirement and they are ill, the insurance kicks in and it pays and it covers the cost for their medical cost. Are you with me? So you need to have an insurance plan for your life. Every person have a specific need. So these lists, there's many more insurance out there. So speak to an advisor, tell them your circumstance, and they'll be able to pinpoint, okay, my insurance for health, I need cover for X, Y, Z. How much? How much can I afford? Let's say £5. Okay, for £5, you can get this X amount covered. Let's say for income protection as well, if I was to be ill, let's say today, and maybe I broke my back and I cannot work, your income is protected with that insurance. So there's so many avenues and options available to you. So it's best to seek counsel, go to one of the retail banks or seek an advisor, and they'll be able to guide you through it as well. Okay, thank you. Oh, I think Mr. Philip, yeah, thank you.
Just to follow up on Florence's question, and from my own personal experience working in the financial industry as well, it's all well and good having, for example, a critical illness cover. But what I've realized is that often the premiums, most people can't afford the premiums, right?
Yeah, that's
because
correct.
it's so expensive. And so if you take somebody who has been ill and they go into a nursing home, they have the insurance that they might think will cover them.
Yeah.
But you find out when it actually does happen that the cover is not enough. So they still have to end up selling the homes, which I've seen so many cases like that.
Yeah.
You know, so from a Christian point of view, okay, we will have all this plan. It's all well and good. But we also need to pray to God that hopefully it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Did you get what I'm trying to say?
I understand what you're
saying.
saying.
It's not black and white like that.
It is not. But actually, if you are actually reviewing your insurance plan on a regular basis, you can actually pick an insurance policy. You speak to the providers. Some brokers, some in the retail banks, they are limited with what they can do. But if you speak to a broker, they have a wide net of options, so they can tweak your policy in a way that could be tailoredly specific to your circumstance. And it's important to review your policy as you go along in life, so that you are covering yourself for unforeseen, circumstances. And it's true, it's not all that black and white. But however, one of the things that I've heard with their properties is that you have to sell it to cover the cost of your nursing homes. There are certain structures out there that can help you cover those costs, and you need to speak to a financial advisor. They would help you structure your circumstance now, your budget now, and they can pick up a policy or a plan for that retirement. So it's wise for us. I can't stress enough. I think it's one of the things that we don't do much is we go to the hospital most of the time, but we don't speak to financial advisors or an accountant who can help you structure your financial goals. So it's important to seek counsel so that they can plan with you, tailoredly made for you. Thank you. I think there was a question at the back. Yeah.
It's me, yeah. My question is it possible to sell my property at the age of 60 or 65, give the money to my son as a gift, and then rent a smaller place to live without the money being taxed?
I want to ask, why do you want to do that?
I mean, the question or the scenario that people have been putting, or I have seen that my colleague said, we've been seeing people when at their latter age, their property are being sold to cater for their nursing home expenses. Yeah. To avoid that, and then I'm not sure whether because it has to be about 20 2,000 before the government comes in or the council comes in to support.
Yeah.
I'm not sure of the cutoff.
Yeah.
And then to avoid that, those who don't have property, the government still pay for their nursing home expenses.
Yeah.
So if I can sell my property, give the money to my son or my children, and then the government coming in, I mean,
So,
as a gift.
Yeah. This strategy, no. I have a question, one simple question. Are we being ethical here? No. And I know I've heard of that strategy, but it's legally, it's ethically not right and sound.
Hello, George, can I come in here, please?
Well, I've not seen any policies and laws that is debanking that. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Can I come in here? Now, in terms of, I mean, passing on your assets, your property to your children, by law, you have to pass on that property as long as you can live 7 years before you die.
Yeah, that's
now,
the cutoff,
if you die before 7 years, then the government will take that inheritance tax from the property. So anybody can do it as long as you trust your children. There are so many instances whereby you pass on your assets to your children.
Yeah.
The children will end up kicking you out of the house. So that is why most parents are not prepared to do this sort of thing. Yeah. So.
Wow. Well, let me answer Mark's questions first. So this goes back to the strategy that you need to sit down and actually have a review with the person to understand how am I going to plan the succession of my assets. There are many strategies that you can use that are legally binding and ethical things to do. So I don't want to go into a personal circumstance because you may think, oh, that's the thing to do. But it doesn't work for everybody. That's why I'm trying to avoid giving a personal, let me use the word advice. But you need to think about the tax strategies that are legally out there that you can do with your property to avoid circumstances, and also planning your retirement and planning what funds you may need to cover your nursing home, to cover any form of health. It's also important to start considering that now so that you're covered in those areas. It's possible. I know it's possible. But what you're talking about, from my point of view, from a Christian point of view, and if I was giving you a personal advice, I won't be happy to be doing that. And back to you that regarding your kids kicking you out from your house, that is a family matter. I don't think we can get into the premises of that. But it all boils down to, if we are actually journeying with a child through our planning and our goals, I don't think it would come to that in that sense. You make the child aware of your will. You can even show them your will. You can show them the assets that you have and what you intend to do with them, for them. So planning in a way, and that's a very niche personal circumstance where I don't know what financial solution to that, to be honest. But it's all about making sure that they are aware of why you're doing this and making them understand the importance of you naming them as the succession of your assets, of your property or your house, if I may say. And maybe you have to speak to Reverend Ben in terms of counseling the two of you in terms of that. But yeah, I can't give any advice in that. Is there any other questions? Yeah, at the back. Thank you. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I think first I want to say thank you for what you've done today. I think we've been able to understand, most especially those of us who came to this country very late and struggling to do something. And part of it something is owning something that you can pass over to your children. Now, from what I can understand from what people have said, and those who have been talking are not the younger ones. They are talking according to their age and what is happening now.
Yeah.
The message you are passing down now is mostly to the younger ones, that they should start.
Okay.
Those who are already at the top of their life is what they are now discussing. That something happened to them, they sell their homes to look after them. Then somebody came up and said, what of at the age of 65 or 60 you sell your property, share it to your children, then if you are going to end up in the home, government will look after you. Then you say, oh, I don't think it's okay, but probably unethical. But this is what is happening. Many people, property, probably within you, you think you are leaving it behind for your children. But sickness just came in. And you're talking about planning. These people, most of these people did not plan. Probably they just came in between and they just started and this started to be going on for them. They will not be thinking about putting this for this. No, I want to own this so that I can pass over to my children as we do at home. All this is no problem at home, but here is a problem. But what they are now, you cannot give us specific. That is it true we can sell out, like I can sell my house now, get the money and give it to my children. I have people who work in the homes here and there, and they tell me, you don't want to hear what is happening to them. They have property and they just sell it. Until you have nothing in your account, government will not come to your aid. So, do you have anything you can just help us with?
That goes back to the strategies of succession and trust. Is your property put into a trust? Because if it's put into a trust, it's guarded. There's a governance structure with trust, you see. The government, if you die, that trust, you name a successor of the trust, who is going to be the beneficiaries, so that you can look into that. You need to sit down. I'll go back again. I don't want to give you a specific thing. I know what to say, but I don't want to give that to you. You need to seek counsel specifically, and they can look at these structures that can help you at your age, at your time. And as you can see, I made a specific thing in terms of setting age boundaries. These are the things that we need to have. Do you have a will? Do you have a trust? Do you have a succession plan? That framework is important to have at your age. So it's better to sit down with someone to build that structure instead of making decisions based on what everybody is saying. Okay. I hope I've answered. I can't give you a specific thing to go for, but these are the options that are available to you. But the best thing is to sit down with an advisor. They will be able to pinpoint exactly what you need to do, so that when you get to the retirement or the age where you are, let me use the word, being in a home, there's something covered for you. There are options there. So I don't think many of us are seeking counsel. That is the problem. We're just going off with the wind. You need to seek counsel. It's important. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
So my question was actually going to be around trust. And I understand everyone's situation would be different, so it's hard to give advice based on a particular overall situation, but what would you say is the advantages and disadvantages of having a trust?
With a trust, it helps you avoid probate. So you can avoid something called like an estate taxes, and it's part of your remit in terms of if you put your asset in a trust, it never stops. Whoever owns it, whoever is made the beneficiary, it keeps going down to the next generation and generation. So it helps you it covers you under that area of estate tax. Also, the assets is transferable. So it removes that taxable and reduces the tax if there's any circumstances where the trust needs to be dissolved. So an example here, let's say it includes revocable life insurance trust and a guarantor retained annuity trust. These are some options that you can actually look at. What is the specific things that it does, so that in a way that when I'm transferring the beneficiaries over, it doesn't causes any tax implications. It doesn't, and it helps you to avoid any probate in terms of who is the beneficiary in the family and what the succession plans is. These options, trust is not only the one of the things that you can consider. There are so many other exemptions that you can do as well. And also there's something called the annual gift exclusions as well. That's some of the things that you can also look at to implement for your specific life. But as I would go back to have a sit down with someone and let them review this with you. They'll be able to pinpoint and advise you that this specific, let's say, account or strategy is the best to go based on your circumstance now, and try to review it every year as you go along, because everything expands, things changes, there's new products that comes into the market always. So it's best to keep yourself up to date with those kind of things as well. Thank you. Oh, sorry, yeah.
The bonds are doing.
So that's towards investment. So when you're talking about bonds, is that you're investing in a treasury bill, you're investing in a government issued bond. What it does, it gives you something called dividends or interest returns on your investment. So depending on the vehicle that you use, what I mean vehicle, with the provider that you're using, it gives you how many times it would provide you that dividends. For example, it could be every 6 months, it could be yearly, it could be quarterly, depending on that. So that is also a good source of revenue. You can reinvest that into purchasing more or diversifying that into other asset classes as well. So with bond structure, there are specific providers that do that. So you need to find that provider and understand their protections, understand their limits and what you can do with that provider, okay? So that's what you need to do. Oh, I think there's one last question at the back. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to ask you about equity release. Is this part of this talk or not? I mean, what is equity release? How does it work? And what are the pros and cons of?
When you say equity release, in what facet?
In property, say in your property. You know, we hear a lot about it on the media, but
yeah. So with equity release, let me just pull up my notes on that. So with equity release, you can have a financial product that allows you as a homeowner to, let's say you own 100% of the property. Let's say the property is 10,000. when you release equity, let's say you want to release 50%, so you release 5,000, that becomes real cash that you can use towards something else. So that many banks provide that provides that services as well. So typically, let's say if you're age, let's say 55 and over, and you have accrued a lot of equity in your property, you can release that to do other things as well. So there are mainly two types that I would say. There's a lifetime mortgage and there's a home reservation plan. So you need to speak to the provider to see which you qualify for, so that you can release capital out of your property. Is that okay?
It becomes part of the equity becomes, you get into ownership with the bank or whoever is providing it.
Yeah.
And then they take their money out after your passing.
Yeah, so if you release equity, you can structure it such a way that you don't have to pay a mortgage on it, or you have to pay a monthly repayment towards that equity that you've taken out. Or you can wait till, as you're saying, as you pass, then they will take their share percentage of how much you've taken out. So it's all variable. Some banks may be limited in what they can do based on their licenses, and it may impact the level of your overall assets, if who is going to be taking over, and also it may impact some of your tax strategies as well, because if you were to do a trust, or let's say for example a trust, they would want you to have 100% ownership of your property, not having a percentage, and because you need to have full ownership before you can do certain tax strategies as well. So it's very variable. You need to have that considered and reviewed before you can go ahead and to do an equity release in your assets.
Thank you.
Okay.
In connection with the equity release, now I think some research has shown that there are a lot of scammers trying to scam the old people. They trick them to release part of their money, probably about less than 25% of the value of the house, and then tell them that, well, you don't have to pay anything until you die. But when they die, the bill covers the whole of the house. So in the end, nobody gets anything. So it is a way of the financial institution trying to find a way of taking the properties from the old people, telling them, oh, you can just get 25% equity release, and then in the end, they end up having nothing to pass on to their
family. And it's very important to understand why you're releasing this equity. What is the reason why you need the funds? Because if there's a way to go about performing the reasons for you releasing that funds, you should do that without touching your assets. There's so many strategies. So it's best. I wouldn't go with some traders who are not governed and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Always check those things, because those they would have to give you some. They will have to give you protections. They'll have to be clear with what they're trying, or you are trying to do, and what their agreement is. So make sure that any provider you go with is regulated, is authorized by the Financial Conduct Authority to be giving you this product or the services that you're looking for. Thank you. Thank you. Before we go, let's share a word of prayer. Thank you very much. Father, Lord, we thank you for a time like this. Thank you for bringing us to the end of our discussion. Lord Jesus, we're praying that whatever has been said here, Father, enable us to go out in confidence, rooted in your direction, that we should free our lives from the love of money, be satisfied, be content with what we have, and enable us to be a good steward of the gifts, of the things that you've entrusted into us. Lord Jesus, we're praying for you to continue to be in our lives, protect ourselves, protect our lives, our families, our loved ones, both here and far away. And as we endeavor in the various activities of today, Father, come and bless us and let us come back tomorrow to worship you. We pray and ask all this in the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. We pray with thanksgiving. Amen.
Amen. Why don't we do it to give it to George again? I was not hoping to even speak here, but some people have managed to push me up here, so I'm here. The whole church wants me to say a very big thank you to you. I guess we accept and we know the dynamics in this context, in this world, in this arena, that for you to source this very informative session, you probably have got to register and pay some huge fees before you can sit in a kind of a lecture like this. So if we have gifted, we've been gifted this very wonderful lecture, talk, engagement, session, we can only thank God and thank you for your offering. I mean, it's a matter of you also giving of yourself and what you are in service of God, in enabling the disciples of Christ to also learn the wisdom about stewardship and know how to apply ourselves when it comes to matters of money and stuff like that. So we are extremely, extremely, extremely grateful to you. And we pray that whatever you have invested in bringing this knowledge and sharing this with us, God will reward you. God will replenish you. And God is the rewarder of all our efforts. So therefore, I'm sure you're content with that. I'm like Peter and John. Money and silver and gold, I have none. What I have is that in the name of Christ, you should be rewarded appropriately. Why don't you give it again? And may I also take the opportunity to say thank you to you, actually, to all of us who have made the time to be here. Obviously, this very excellent knowledge, if he was here by himself, he will be speaking to the pews. And that might not make any impact. So you having prioritized this and stopped whatever you were doing and made a time to come and sit and share in this time is also worth commending. So thank you so very much for coming. Thank you for coming. And we pray that whatever you've grasped would also improve you. If not least, if that does not even make a huge impact on the finances as to where it is now, because maybe you are gray hair like me or bald head like me, and we are at a time of passing, maybe we may be able to pass it on to others. But above all, that God can find us worthy. God can count us responsible with this stewardship we have over the resources that comes through our hands, whether it's for a day, 2 days, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever years more we've got on earth. God can look at us and say, okay, I've seen my son, even his heart has turned. The way he's looking at, she or he is looking at these resources is a bit different. And I'm sure that is also another thing that we can count as a blessing you've had this morning and afternoon. Before I say my final word, I'm going to invite a senior steward who said I should make a presentation I don't know how to do, so she will have to come and do it herself. Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend. George, thank you so much for giving us this wonderful talk. It's been very, very educative. And if I was in Ghana, I would say that I stand in the legs of the Men's Fellowship, but I have been authorized by Mr. Graham, the chair of the Men's Fellowship, to present this bouquet of flowers to you. And since we know that you've recently welcomed a new addition to your family, we ask you to please present this to Mrs. French on our behalf, and congratulations and welcome to the new one.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. The session was streamed, and so we have it online on our Edgware Methodist YouTube TV. On our link, this session is there. It will be the topmost video or whatever. So if you want to look back on this, you can. I also would expect that maybe a little later we can create a link of the slides, so that those slides that George used, we could share those slides with you as well. But this, George has not asked me to do, but it feels right in my heart to do, that maybe tomorrow we can bring what we call a review sheet, right? For you to give, or let me simply say feedback form. That's an easier term. A feedback form. Evaluation form. Thank you. That's even more better, even better. That's why we have scholars in here, isn't it? Yes. So evaluation forms. Yes, and questions. So if I don't know whether you want to bring us one tomorrow, if you email me something, I can print copies and bring. So those who have been part of this session, maybe tomorrow after service, you can spend some 3 minutes, 5 minutes to fill them out. Let us hear how you felt about this. Let's hear, especially give comment about his own delivery and presentation and all that he shared, and so that we can document that as well. When George was talking to me about we doing this, there is a bigger picture. It's not just our own financial health that we need to plan. There is also a bigger plan for these experiences. We want to build this up to a place where everyone will be so liberated, will be so knowledgeable, will be so equipped with the tips and skills to be able to kind of manage all these little corners of our own life and health in relation to the things that comes through our hands. So watch the space. Something else will be coming. Actually, we will be holding maybe a bigger conference next year somehow with other Christian people from everywhere to come to us. This is the home of it. We have given birth to it. So people can come with us, and then we can have another forum where we can share this beautiful knowledge and experience. Super great, isn't it? So, I mean, let's keep the spirit up. Tell people what they have missed. Yeah, let people really feel jealous that they missed today. Tomorrow, let the conversations after service, refreshment, whatever, let the conversation be about today. And let people feel how much they've missed. And let's give thanks to God. And let's continue to hold on here. God, in the next 100 years to come, is using you and me to set a foundation for things to come. We don't know where the Lord is going to take us. But I'm praying that your investment, your dedication, and your faithfulness will be part of what God will use for this church, for this place, and for this time. May God bless you for coming.